The rake scraped against concrete, dry, gritty, uneven. I was halfway through clearing the front walk when I saw the envelope tucked into the windshield wiper of my car. Cream-colored, folded once. Not a bill, not rain, just that envelope, soft-edged, fluttering like it had something to say. I didn't stop raking. Not right away. Our neighborhood had a way of talking without using voices, little things left on porches, trash bins nudged into property lines, Christmas lights that stayed up just long enough to say, "I'm watching you." This envelope was one of those messages. It was Sunday morning, late fall. The sky hadn't decided if it wanted to rain or just hang there in a bad mood. I kept my hoodie up, kept raking, but I watched the envelope out of the corner of my eye. I knew who left it. Probably Maureen or Dave from the yellow house across the street. Same couple who had complained last year when I trimmed the hedge too short near the sidewalk, as if public shrubbery had a minimum hair length. Eventually, I set the rake aside, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked to the car. The envelope was damp from dew, but not soaked. I opened it with the kind of care you give to threats dressed as invitations. Inside, one sheet of lined paper torn from a notepad. The message was written in blue pen, round, deliberate handwriting. "Hi, we've noticed your car is often parked slightly beyond your driveway line. It makes backing out difficult for us, especially with our kids. Please be mindful. Thanks." There was no name, no house number, but they didn't need to sign it. Passive aggression always carries a signature, whether it wants to or not. I folded the note, placed it on the passenger seat, and stood there a moment with my hand on the car roof. My car, a '98 Honda Civic with a crooked left taillight, was parked exactly where it always was. Aligned with the driveway, just an inch or two over the painted curb line where the slope met the sidewalk. Technically not illegal, definitely not obstructive, but inconvenient was a currency people traded in here. I looked across the street. The yellow house had its curtains drawn. Dave's big white SUV, an Escalade because of course, wasn't in the driveway. Maybe Maureen wrote the note while he was out. Or maybe they wrote it together, sipping kombucha and nodding like they were doing the Lord's work. I didn't write back. I didn't move my car either. But I did park straighter the next morning, just to say, "I heard you. Now let's see how you behave." I've lived on Willow Bend Lane for 7 years, moved in right after my divorce. The house was a fixer-upper with too much vinyl siding and not enough insulation, but it had a good porch and decent bones. I liked the quiet. The neighbors were fine. The kind of people who asked about your weekend plans but didn't really want an answer longer than nothing much. You learn to keep things on the surface. But there's something about driveways, those little strips of land that belong to you, and only you, that brings out the worst in people. That's how it started. One envelope, one polite nudge disguised as community concern. Then came the escalation. 3 days after the note, I came home from work, IT help desk for a local insurance firm, nothing glamorous, and found Dave parked directly across from my driveway, perfectly parallel. His big SUV angled just so, making it impossible for me to turn in without a 5-point maneuver. Now, to be clear, street parking is legal on both sides of our street, but most folks know not to block the mouth of a neighbor's driveway. It's an unspoken rule. But unspoken rules are only followed by people who care about the people they're sharing the street with. I tried to pull in. Couldn't. Backed up. Tried again. Still too tight. On the third try, my rear wheel tapped the curb and scraped something metal. I heard the sound before I felt it. I reversed hard and parked on the street in front of my own house. Got out. Walked to the front of Dave's SUV. It wasn't touching my driveway, technically, but it was close enough that anyone with eyes could see what it was. A message in car form. He was telling me, "You park crooked? I'll park in your way." I didn't knock on his door, didn't leave a note. But my hands itched the way they used to back in high school, before I learned that you can't throw fists at someone just because they're being a smug prick. Instead, I went inside, heated leftover chili, sat on the couch, but my eyes kept drifting to the window, to that Escalade, sitting there like it belonged. 2 weeks passed like that. A cold war conducted in the curb space between our homes. They never said anything to my face. I never knocked on their door. But we both knew. I'd come out some mornings to find his SUV pulled closer. Some days, he'd leave a wide gap, like dangling bait, testing me. I didn't take it, but I did document it. Started snapping photos, timestamps, angles, just in case. Because when someone starts with notes and moves to silent, spatial aggression, you know something uglier is on the horizon. Still, nothing could have prepared me for what came next. It was a Friday. First real rain in a month. I got off work early. Systems maintenance day, servers were down, and decided to grab groceries before the weekend rush. I returned around 4:30 and stopped at the end of the street. There was a car in my driveway. Not near it. Not across from it. In it. A silver Subaru Outback. Clean. Newer model. Parked diagonally across the upper half of my concrete pad like it belonged there. I blinked. Looked around. Dave's Escalade was in his own driveway. No movement at the windows. No sign of delivery guys, utility vans, or emergency repairs. I drove slowly past my own house, heart ticking faster than the speedometer. I parked half a block, down, got out, and walked back in the rain. My shoes squelched on the sidewalk. My hoodie stuck to my neck. I stood at the edge of my own driveway and stared at the Subaru. And then I saw it, a pink baby sunshade in the back window, a pair of kids' shoes on the floor, and a parking permit hanging from the mirror. Maureen. This was her car. I didn't go full rage. I didn't key the paint or call the cops. But I did take pictures. Then I walked up their steps and rang the bell. It took a minute. Then Dave opened the door, wearing gym shorts, holding a protein shake. The smell of cooked broccoli floated out like a slap. "Hey man," he said casual. "What's up?" I nodded toward my driveway. "That your wife's car?" He didn't even look. "Yeah, she had to run the kids inside. Quick drop-off." I checked my watch. "Been there 15 minutes. She had to talk to her sister. It's temporary." "It's my driveway." He took a sip, didn't flinch. "You've been parking weird for months, you know. Over the line. Makes it hard for us to pull out." "So you decided to escalate?" "No," he said, smiling like a saint. "We just figured you wouldn't mind. You're home late most days." I stood there, rain dripping from my hood, watching his expression for even a flicker of decency. Didn't find one. "You've made your point," I said. Then I turned and walked back into the rain. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about territory, about how people draw invisible lines and then punish you when you step across them, even by an inch. And I realized something. They weren't going to stop. Not until I pushed back. Not with a note. Not with a complaint. With something they couldn't ignore. Something that looked polite on the surface, but carried teeth underneath. The next morning, I bought red spray paint. It was the industrial kind, the kind contractors use to mark utility lines or no parking zones. I got it from a hardware store 2 towns over, not because I needed to hide anything, but because I didn't want the clerk at Miller's down the block asking questions. People in neighborhoods like ours remember purchases. They talk. It sat on my passenger seat for 3 days before I used it. I spent that time watching, not just Dave and Maureen, but the entire flow of our cul-de-sac. Who parked where? When the mail came? What time the garbage trucks passed? Which cars stayed past midnight? I mapped the street in my mind like a general surveying a battlefield. I watched Dave's SUV come and go with military regularity. 7:12 a.m. departure, 6:58 p.m. return. He backed in like it was a showroom floor, always nose out, like he was ready to charge at a moment's notice. Maureen, on the other hand, was chaos. Her Outback appeared at odd hours. Some days she parked it crooked in their driveway. Other times, she'd leave it teetering just past the edge of my property, the rear bumper hanging half a tire into my entrance, like a tongue poking out. No one else parked that close to my house. No one else needed to. So I waited, and I watched. And then, late Thursday night, I acted. It was almost midnight. I pulled on gloves, stepped out under a moonless sky, and walked to the edge of my driveway with the spray can in hand. I didn't say a word, didn't wear a hoodie or a mask. This wasn't vandalism. This was visual clarification. I drew a thick red line across the curb where my property began and where it ended, perfectly measured, 16 feet wide. I added another red X at the midpoint. No words, just symbols. The next morning, I woke early and stood by my window, sipping lukewarm coffee as cars passed. Maureen came out first. She stopped at the edge of her lawn, stared at the curb, and tilted her head like a dog trying to understand a whistle. Then, she got into her car and drove off without parking. 10 minutes later, Dave came out in gym shorts and a t-shirt that said, "Grind never stops." He saw the paint and stopped dead. I saw his jaw work. Saw the way he turned slowly toward my house, squinting like he could see me behind the blinds. I didn't blink, didn't move. He didn't either. Then he walked back into his house. The red lines didn't stop them, but they slowed them down. For 2 weeks, no one parked within a foot of those lines. Not Dave, not Maureen, not even their guests. I even saw one Amazon delivery guy pause and adjust his van so it didn't graze the curb. I started to think maybe we'd reached an understanding. But I should have known. People like Dave don't accept stalemates. They look for loopholes. It was the third Thursday of the month. Trash day. I came home from work early. Server maintenance again, nothing critical. As I turned onto Willow Bend Lane, I saw 2 garbage bins placed right at the edge of my driveway. Not in it, not on my lawn, just close enough to make the turn-in awkward. They weren't mine. My bins were still tucked beside the garage, where I always kept them. These bins were blue. My house used black. I parked on the street again, took pictures, removed the bins, no note, no confrontation, just more documentation. That night, I placed the bins right back where I found them. This time, directly in front of Dave's driveway. Next morning, they were gone. But a new problem appeared. Maureen's Outback, parked on the street, right at the mouth of my driveway. Again, no red line could stop them if they just kept ignoring it. This time, I knocked. It was Saturday, mid-morning. Kids' laughter drifted from the backyard. Dave answered in jeans and a flannel shirt. The fake weekend casual look. "You need something?" he said. "Your wife's car is blocking my driveway." He looked past me, pretending to check. "Looks fine to me." "It's not fine," I said. "It's illegal."
"Then call the cops." Silence. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "To turn this into something bigger?" He stepped onto the porch. Close. A little too close. "I want you to stop acting like you own the whole damn street." "I park in my driveway," I said. "That's it. You park over lines. You take up space. You think you're better than the rest of us." That last line threw me. "Better?" I laughed. "This isn't about parking. You're just pissed I didn't roll over." He shrugged. "Maybe." Then he turned and shut the door. I called the non-emergency line. filed a complaint. The officer came out 2 hours later, a young guy, polite, bored. He looked at the Outback, took my statement, knocked on Dave's door. Maureen answered. The conversation lasted 5 minutes. Lots of nodding, smiling. She moved the car afterward. No ticket, just a warning. That night, my mailbox was left open. The lid bent back like it had been yanked. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just open. Another message. I bought a security camera, installed it under the eave, angled toward the driveway and street. Motion sensor, night vision, no audio. I didn't hide it. In fact, I added a little sign near the porch. Smile, you're being recorded. That week, Dave parked 2 blocks away. Maureen stopped using my driveway. And for a while, things were quiet. Too quiet. Because people like Dave don't just retreat, they reload. 2 Fridays later, I came home to find a flyer taped to my door, printed, glossy, red letters. Community parking etiquette. Let's be mindful of our neighbors. Blocked driveways equals unsafe curb, overhang equal inconsiderate, multiple complaints equals legal action. Together, we make Willow Bend a respectful place to live. The Willow Bend neighborhood. Watch. There is no official neighborhood watch on our block. I called the city clerk to confirm. It was Dave, or Maureen, or both, trying to make their pettiness look official. I took the flyer down and filed it with the others. Photos, notes, timestamps. I was building a dossier now, not out of obsession, but necessity. Because people who escalate over curb lines don't stop until someone else draws a line they can't cross, and I was getting ready to draw mine. The envelope arrived folded in half with no return address. It was hand-delivered, not mailed. I knew because there was no stamp, no barcode, just my name printed in block letters. M. Ellis. Not even Mr. Just those 6 letters. Like a warning label. Inside, a typed letter. Subject: Driveway Violation Notice. Dear resident, it has come to our attention that your vehicle has repeatedly encroached upon sidewalk easements and neighboring property boundaries. This is a formal warning. Continued violations may result in citations, municipal complaints, or legal escalation. Thank you for your cooperation. Willow Bend, Homeowners Association. I stared at the bottom of the letter for a long time. There was no Willow Bend Homeowners Association. I knew that for a fact. When I bought the house, that was one of the reasons I chose this street. No dues, no meetings, no arbitrary lawn inspections. I called City Hall to confirm again. They laughed when I asked. No HOA in your sector, the clerk said. You're unincorporated. You'd need a full charter, board signatures, and a public registry to start one. So it was fake. Just like the flyer. Dave, or Maureen, had made up an entire organization to scare me. And that was when I knew something had to change. Permanently. The thing is, I wasn't a confrontational person. Not by nature. I was the guy who stayed late to fix someone else's IT ticket. Who took the dented cart instead of leaving it for the next person. I liked calm. Liked predictability. That's what made this whole war so infuriating. It pulled me out of who I was. They weren't trying to fix a problem. They were trying to define me. As a nuisance, as a rule breaker, as the bad neighbor. But I wasn't playing anymore. I started doing research, real research, on zoning laws, on easements, on street parking ordinances. I spent 3 nights going through city PDFs, mapping measurements, printing photos with rulers next to tires. I even spoke to a lawyer. Well, a friend of a friend who worked in municipal defense. You're on solid ground, she said. They're bluffing. Can I do anything to stop it? You can escalate it. File a harassment claim. Start a paper trail. If it continues, you can take them to small claims. But honestly, most people back off when they know they're being documented.
I already had documentation. I just needed to make it visible. That weekend, I put up a bulletin board. Not on the street, not on city land. On my own lawn, right beside the mailbox. Just a simple wooden post with a plexiglass cover. Inside, I posted the fake HOA letter, the anonymous flyer, the photos of Maureen's car in my driveway, the garbage bins blocking my entrance. I titled the display, Ongoing Neighbor Dispute for Community Awareness. Within 2 days, it was the talk of the street. Janice from 3 doors down stopped while walking her dog. Is that real? Every word, I said. Rick, the high school coach on the corner, slowed his truck one morning and gave me a thumbs up. 'Bout time someone called them out. Even the mailman asked, "Can I take a picture of this?" "Go ahead," I said. Because here's the thing about passive-aggressive people. They rely on silence. They thrive in the shadows of plausible deniability. But sunlight? Sunlight makes them squirm. The board stayed up. The red lines stayed fresh. The camera stayed visible. And for almost 2 weeks, Dave and Maureen vanished from the field. No notes, no parking games, no flyers. But it couldn't last. The final shot came on a Tuesday afternoon. I got home from work and saw a tow truck parked across the street. Not just any truck. A city-authorized vehicle with flashing lights and the logo of the county's parking enforcement unit. At first, I thought maybe Dave had called them on me. But then I saw the driver talking to Maureen. She was pacing the sidewalk, gesturing wildly at my house, then at the curb. I parked quietly, walked up the driveway, and stood with my phone ready. "Can I help you?" I asked. The tow truck driver turned. "Are you Mr. Ellis?" "I am. We got a report of an illegally parked vehicle blocking pedestrian access." Maureen cut in. "He paints his own curb red. It's not even legal. He's using it to block community parking." The driver looked at the curb, then at me. "This your paint?" "Yes," I said. "It's on my property line. I can show you the footage." I pointed at the camera. "I also have documentation," I added. "City zoning codes. You want copies?" The driver hesitated. Maureen's mouth opened, closed. The driver pulled out his phone, tapped a few things, then sighed. "Look," he said to Maureen, "this isn't a violation. Unless the city marks it, or someone files a claim, there's nothing I can do." She turned red. "So he can just claim the street now?" "It's his curb," the driver said. "You want to argue? Talk to city planning." Then he nodded at me, got back in the truck, and drove off. Maureen stood there, arms crossed, burning with silent rage. I nodded once and walked into my house without saying a word. That night, someone egged my porch. 3 raw eggs. Splatters on the door. Shells in the bushes. Petty. Obvious. I cleaned it up, filed a police report, added a new camera, this one angled lower toward the lawn. And then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I smiled, because I knew this wasn't a war anymore. It was a countdown. The eggs weren't the end. 2 days later, someone left a plastic traffic cone in the middle of my driveway. Bright orange, weighted bottom, no labels. Just there, blocking me. I saw it at 6:47 a.m., just as I was leaving for work. I stood there for a minute, keys in hand, wondering whether to laugh or fume. Instead, I picked it up, set it beside the mailbox, and went on with my day like it never happened. But I logged the time, snapped a photo. I had a full folder now on my hard drive titled Neighbor Interference, and I had a plan. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue. Nothing fancy, just 3 friends from work, a couple lawn chairs, and a portable charcoal grill I hadn't used in over a year. I set it up in the front yard, put up a little speaker, Let the smell of smoke and burgers drift across the street. I made a point of parking my Civic at the mouth of my own driveway, hood out, perfectly aligned with the red-painted curb, like a flag. Around 2 p.m., Dave walked out with a cordless hedge trimmer and started trimming the same bush he always ignored. I watched him while sipping a soda, not saying a word. He didn't wave, didn't even glance at us. Maureen came out later with the kids, set up a sprinkler. Loud laughter, high-pitched chaos. It was all staged. I knew it. The noise, the visible, happy family routine. It was their way of saying, look how normal we are. Look how disruptive he is. But I didn't bite. Instead, I waved. Once. And turned back to the grill. Because this wasn't about being louder. It was about being unshakable. Monday morning, the flyer appeared again. Same paper. Same fake Willow Bend Neighborhood Watch heading. But this time, it had a new section. If you are concerned about residents posting slanderous or misleading information on personal displays, e.g., bulletin boards, please contact the Neighborhood Dispute Hotline at 555-719-8893. I called the number. It went straight to voicemail. The greeting was a robotic voice. You've reached the Willow Bend Community Line. Please leave your message. I left one. This is Marcus Ellis at 742 Willow Bend. You can tell Dave and Maureen this number's been reported for impersonating a municipal service. I've already forwarded it to the city attorney's office. Thanks. I hung up. Then I called the city attorney's office and did exactly what I said I would. That week, I added one more printout to my bulletin board. Be advised. This residence is actively documenting and pursuing legal channels for all forms of targeted harassment. All communications and behaviors are recorded and time-stamped. Below it, I posted a screenshot of my city complaint form with the confirmation number blacked out for privacy. Dave saw it. I know he did. Because the next day, he finally knocked. It was a Wednesday. I was home early, finishing a remote ticket on my laptop when I heard the knock. 2 short raps, no doorbell. I opened the door to find him standing there in his usual gym shirt and joggers, but with none of the smugness he usually wore. We need to talk, he said. I nodded. Sure, out here's fine. He stepped back. I didn't invite him in. He glanced at the bulletin board, at the camera. This is getting out of hand. I agree. His jaw tightened. We're just trying to keep the street organized. No, I said, crossing my arms. You're trying to make me uncomfortable enough to change my behavior. Over a car parked 2 inches over a line. You've been aggressive. I've been transparent. Silence stretched between us. Then he sighed. Maureen's embarrassed. She says the board makes her feel targeted. I raised an eyebrow. She parked in my driveway multiple times, left anonymous flyers, tried to make up a fake HOA. She thought it would help. Help what? He didn't answer. Instead, he said something unexpected. We'll stop. I didn't say anything. We'll park in our driveway. We won't block yours. No more flyers. No more... whatever this has become. He looked tired, like a man who had started a chess game just to show off and realized too late he was in checkmate. I nodded once. Good. He hesitated again. Can you take the board down? No, it's so, I said. Not until it stays quiet for a while. Maybe a month. Maybe 2. He didn't argue, just nodded, turned, and walked away. The next 4 weeks were the quietest I'd had on Willow Bend in a year. No flyers, no bins, no parking games. They used their own driveway. They smiled at other neighbors, but they didn't speak to me. And that was fine, because some victories aren't loud. Some victories just mean waking up, looking outside and seeing your driveway, empty, clean, yours, like it should have always been. But it didn't stay that way. Because 2 months later, something new happened. Something no camera, no paint, no printout could have stopped. And I had to decide, was I still playing defense?
Or was it time to end the game completely? It was early November when it happened. Cool air, frost edging the grass, the kind of morning where even silence feels crisp. I had just poured coffee, opened my laptop to catch up on overnight IT tickets, and glanced out the front window like I always did. And I froze. There were tire marks on my lawn. Deep ones. Not just on the edge, full arcs, cutting across the front patch I'd reseeded just weeks earlier. Mud kicked up. The red line on the curb smudged and blurred by a wide wheel track. I stepped outside, barefoot on the porch, coffee still steaming in my hand. There was no car there, just the mess they left behind. The thing about tire tracks is they tell a story. They don't lie. They don't pretend to be misunderstandings. These weren't delivery tires. Too wide, too curved. No one does a full U-turn through someone's lawn by accident. And there was only one kind of vehicle on our block with tires that thick and wide. Dave's Escalade. I didn't knock this time. I filed another police report. I emailed the city. I attached stills from my security cam. Blurry, but clear enough to show a large white SUV pulling onto my lawn, reversing slowly, then peeling out, taillights flashing into the dawn fog. That alone wouldn't be enough for charges. But it was enough for a visit. The officer arrived 2 days later. Same young guy as last time. He walked the lawn with me, took photos, asked questions. Professional, quiet. "You've had a file open already, right?" he asked. I nodded. "Since June." He scribbled something in his notebook. "I'll add this to it. Want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "I want it documented." He closed his notebook, looked at the bulletin board. Still, standing, still updated. "Can I be honest with you?" he asked. "Sure. You're doing everything by the book. Most people don't bother, but it's working." That caught me off guard. "How do you figure?" "You haven't retaliated. No escalation. You just record. And now we've got a pattern." He paused. "Sometimes, the best move is making sure the other guy has no excuses left." That night, I made a final update to the board. Photos of the tire tracks. Snapshot from the camera. Time-stamped. A laminated copy of the police report. And a single-line statement. "This is the final warning. The next act of aggression will be handled through legal counsel." It wasn't a bluff. Because the next morning, I sent an email to the lawyer I'd consulted months ago. Subject line, "Ready to proceed." Days passed, then weeks. No cars near my lawn, no cones, no flyers, no driveway blockages. Dave even started parking in the back of his house, something he never used to do. They stopped waving to anyone. Their porch lights stayed off. Their curtains stayed drawn. Some of the neighbors noticed. Janice called them the ghosts across the street now. And the silence? It finally felt earned. It took me 4 more months to feel safe enough to take the bulletin board down. I removed each piece slowly, like peeling off layers of armor. The letters, the flyers, the photos, the timeline. All of it had been part of something that felt bigger than just a parking feud. It was about territory, respect, voice. People like Dave counted on your silence. They expected you to stay polite, to cave, to compromise until your boundaries belong to someone else. But once you say, "This is my line," and you mean it, something shifts. They see you differently. Or maybe, for the first time at all. The board is gone now. But the red paint remains. I freshen it every spring. Neighbors still slow down when they pass my curb. Not out of fear, but out of memory. Of what happened when one man refused to be erased, driveway line by driveway line. Because some boundaries aren't just painted on concrete. They're written in how you choose to stand. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.